All right, welcome to lesson 3 of the Photoshop non-destructive coloring book pages. In this lesson, we're going to be coloring in a complex calavera. So you'll notice that I've gone through and turned on my contiguous and all layers on the paint bucket tool, and I already have my layers named. They have their hex code and their color notation so that I know what I'm playing with. And just like in lessons 1 and 2, I'm going to go through and just kind of fill in the different pieces. But you'll also note that in this one specifically, there are some shapes that are not closed. So that's kind of where we get into the more complex layering bit in here. So in some of these, we're going to need to actually go back in with a paintbrush or selection tools, or even just go in and kind of close those up ourselves. So again, I'm focusing on non-destructive editing, meaning that each color is going on its own layer. So you see me swapping layers, I'm changing the colors, and I'm just kind of adding in some color as we go through here. Now, the fun part about this lesson is that we're actually going to get into using some of the more complex tools such as blending modes and the opacity. Note, I also have my history panel open, so when I screw up on something, I can easily go back a step. And so that saves me a lot of time in the long run instead of having to continuously hold down Control Z or Command Z if you're on a Mac. I can easily just click on the history piece where I screwed up or the one right before it, and that saves me a ton of time. Okay, so I filled in most of the little areas that I want to. I'm going to start looking at kind of coloring in some of the more like creams in there, and then I'm going to start blending some of this together. And then I'm going to add in a background color. Now, here's a couple things. If I have all layers turned on and I click on the outside, it's just going to put it on the outside. But if I turn off contiguous and all layers and I put the color on there, it actually covers the entire layer. And this is the fun part of using the blending modes. I can actually put my entire background layer up on the top. Now remember, when we place things on the top, it covers everything below it. So since our layer here is a solid PNG, it's not a transparent PNG, when it gets placed on the top, it looks like we haven't done anything. But if we use a blend mode like darker color, it's going to reveal only the darker color in that layer and reveal all of the lighter colors underneath it. Now all of the different darken layer modes kind of look the same, so I'm just choosing darker color. Now as we go in, we're going to start doing some blending, and we're going to create a new layer to blend some of these layers together and add a little bit more oomph to our design. Now I'm going to go in between my yellow and orange. I'm just going to go above that one actually, and I'm going to add a new layer. I'm going to title this yellow orange because I just want to tell myself which colors I'm blending. And I'm actually going to select both the yellow and the orange layer. And I'm going to do that by selecting just the color that I've put onto that layer. So you'll notice as I'm hovering over the layer, I'm holding down the Control key on my keyboard, and it's giving me the ability to select the entire layer, so all the color that's on that layer. Because Control will only select one layer, I need to hold down Shift and Control in order to select more than one layer. So now you'll see I have yellow and orange selected, so now I'm going to start blending. And that's one of the other reasons why we keep everything on separate layers, different colors on different layers. And again, if I find I don't like it, I can always delete that entire layer and it doesn't affect my original design. So I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to add some yellow, I'm going to add some orange, and you'll notice that when I use my paintbrush tool, it's only appearing inside those marquees. It's only appearing where I tell it to appear. It doesn't appear anywhere outside of that. And that's one of the beautiful parts about this, is that we control exactly where we want it to be. So I'm just going to go in and make some of those changes. The other piece to this is you'll notice my opacity level. I've changed my opacity level so I'm not painting at 100%. And this is allowing me to make some subtle changes to the color. Now when I go back in and I change the blend modes later, we're going to make these really pop. Now, something else that you can do is you can make your brush larger, you can make your brush smaller, and you can do that really easily by using the bracket keys right next to the P and the backslash key on your keyboard. The one closest to the P will, that's an open bracket, that's going to make your brush smaller. The closed bracket is going to make your brush larger. It's just a quick way to change the size of your brush, and it's going to save you a ton of time. I tell my students all the time, Photoshop is a two-handed program. You need one hand on your mouse and one hand on your keyboard pretty much at all times while you're working in this program. Now, you can also use the magic wand tool to select specific colors, but the hard part about that is that it's going to be selecting colors that are within a certain pixel depth. So it might be a couple of hex codes off one way or the other, and you can set that to be more strict or more loose so it selects more or less, but it's really going to be down to the pixel, and it's not necessarily going to be accurate for the layer that you're working on. So for example, if I wanted to select the layer that I'm currently working on, the blend layer that has more than one color on it, if I use the magic wand tool, it might select the other colors from the other layer, not something that I want to be working with. So you really have to know which tool to work with for what you're trying to do. Okay, now that I'm done blending my layers within my Calavera, now I want to create some color in the background and really kind of make that pop a little bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and add another color in here. And I'm going to play around with the blend mode as well. So adding in the pink here is going to brighten it up a little bit. Again, my opacity level is low. And then I'm just going to adjust the blend mode to make it a little bit brighter. There are many different types of blending modes that you can use in Photoshop. In fact, there are 6 different categories, so normal, darken, lighten, contrast, inversion, and component. I've listed some information about those blending modes in the description of this video, along with a link to Adobe's website to show you even more detail about each of these specific layer blending modes. So now we're going to add another layer, and I actually want to make this a little bit darker. So I'm going to make sure that contiguous and all layers are turned off, and I'm going to add a black layer. So black is taking up the entirety of this layer. If I turn off my layer above it, you'll see it's entirely black. And that, the blending mode from that pink layer is allowing the pink to blend with the black. But because I want some of the red to appear from below, I'm going to add a mask onto here so I can create kind of this ombre edging that you're seeing in here now. To use a mask, we're going to make sure that the white box that we've just created on the layer is selected, and we're actually going to paint in black to hide the current layer that we're on. We can paint in white to reveal it, and then if you right click on it, you can disable it, click on it again to enable it, so you can still see that you haven't destroyed that original layer. You're still using non-destructive techniques. We're going to get into masking in another lesson later on. Now we're going to get into adding a name on our Calavera, and adding the name on our Calavera is to honor the deceased, which is the purpose of this culture's tradition. So we're going to go in and just choose a font by using the type tool. That's the T on your toolbar, and then you're going to click once on your screen to be able to type. Now I've also moved up to the top layer because I do want this to show above everything else. And the reason why I say click once is because if you click once instead of clicking and dragging, you'll have control to make your text larger or smaller, and then you can determine where you want to place it on your Calavera. And I'm going to keep mine right in the center. Cool part about using text is that you can also change the font, the size, the color, all sorts of different things. And that's a whole nother ballgame to get into and play with, and we'll get into that in the next lesson. Don't forget to save your file, and that's the end of lesson 3.